We're a bunch of people running around, making the same mistakes over and over. And I don't know why we think it will be different somewhere else, unless we learn what we're supposed to while we're here. The discovery presents the concept of another plane of existence after this reality has been deemed spent. The soul, the consciousness, the mind, whatever one wants to call it, is presented as separate from our bodies when we die. And with a sharp contrast on what mistakes can do to one's subconscious, it begs the question whether this is it for us. This life, this reality. Is there more on the other side? This is 2 takes, and this is 1 shot. An analysis of the film, The Discovery. Be warned, there are spoilers throughout. This film has many connections on various different topics that have been explained in other episodes, and so there will be moments of recollection from time to time. The Discovery follows an idea that a different plane of existence, an afterlife, is something not to be feared. Within this reality, a scientist named Dr. Thomas Harber makes a breakthrough in finding definitive proof of an afterlife. The reaction that followed was millions of people choosing to kill themselves to get there. And I am not saying that the people behind the film, the director and writers, had not thought further ahead than the initial discovery, with people killing themselves to perhaps be interpreted as a false prediction, but rather the implication that it is almost like people are taking this word of truth as the be-all and end-all of everything. It can be interpretive, much like many religious texts, much like Chinese whispers. The understanding of the discovery of the afterlife has been romanticized to fit each person's life and their version of events. And in the end, it was their choice to do something about it. Their choice to end their lives within the same reality to those who choose to live. The person behind the discovery, although he isn't the main character, has captured my attention as a person that has an internal struggle within him, denying his own emotions to govern over his work. Dr. Thomas Harber, the harbinger of the afterlife, has, time and again, been given allowances to truly feel what he has done. His impact upon the world and how people have believed in his findings so much that they feel they need to deliver their soul/consciousness to the other side quicker than planned, has never really been etched in his face, his voice, or his actions. He is always level-headed, wanting his word to essentially be law. This can be understood between the announcement between himself and Lacey of how she is essentially excommunicated from the cult-like situation because she is apparently talking about his contraption not working to other workmates. His work has established belief, and so it almost seems he wants dominion upon those poor unfortunate souls he helped save. These people cleaning up after him and helping him in jumpsuits with different colours to establish different ranks has been put in place, apparently, for their benefit. Thomas Harber does not believe in it, but I think differently. I think he relies on this, to the point of not tolerating people thinking differently or slandering his work. He wants people on his side, and if this is the only way, so be it. If we look back to the first 10 minutes of the film, when he is being interviewed, he always wants to establish a dominance in the room. He did this by asking the interviewer not to screw up, and then for the cameraman killing himself, he just sits there. His expression only reveals a little, but from what one can see, flashes of guilt are relevant, if small. And then this coldness and determination flood over him, pushing him further with his research. However, understanding the full picture, we know after a while that it was essentially his fault that his wife, or his mother, killed herself. He doesn't necessarily take responsibility, but rather goes full pursuit and buries himself in his work for the sake of compensating for something, to give back something perhaps in exchange for the one thing taken from him. And it's interesting how his research is placed on the afterlife, the only place he cannot go, the only place he cannot follow his wife. Dr. Thomas Harber is a hard character to define. However, from what is understood, he has compartmentalized his trauma, like he has compartmentalized the undoing of the human population from his findings. Apparently, he is not to blame here, but chooses to go further into his research to compensate for the death of millions. This subdued sense of emotion, almost apathy if you will, seen on Dr. Thomas Harbour, can also be seen on many characters, even Will at times. And it was at this point that broke the camel's back of bad reviews of the movie as a whole, so to speak. But like The Lobster, I feel there's a reason for this lack of feeling. It gave the timeline of 2 years since the discovery was aired and given to the world. Now, imagine 2 years of being in a world where a scientific breakthrough was given to you. What would you do with it? You can believe it, or not believe it, right? The choice that matters is what you do with it, and those that chose to leave, do so. Thinking in greener pastures of the horizon rather than what they have in front of them, and that is their choice. In turn, the emotional turmoil becomes less. Like the colours chosen for the film, of light starchy blues and whites, is cold and cynical. The characters almost look bored, walking around slowly, lost, figuring out their place. After having 2 whole years of listening to the death toll rising, of choosing not to go to more funerals, it gets exhausting to try and show some emotions for something or someone who has simply made a choice. They did not think of you, they thought of their next step. It's an unreal sort of reality if you think about it, so unreal that one can question it, the reality of millions dying through a scientific discovery of the afterlife. For this to be Will's reality, with us, the audience, journeying with him through his eyes. It can be unreal to think that this is the only reality, and in a way, the film itself makes the audience question this to the point of the big reveal, that it isn't. Talk about a twist in fate. Let's think further into other realities. From the realization that Will is stuck in a loop based on the misfortune of feeling that he could have done something for the woman on the boat, Isla. In reality, when told to us by Isla via Will's subconscious, we can understand that he did not even get to the other side. He didn't go to the home of his father, he went back to his life, and died some time later. So what I'm trying to understand, which is the whole basis of this film, is that even though Will is dead, how can he know about what is happening at his dad's place? Unless he has entered a different plane of existence to which it plays out from the beginning, where Will does get on the boat, and then goes further with a different choice. The choice we see in the film, the one where he does go to his father's. Much like what is explained in the OA episodes, the many worlds interpretation theory can establish this understanding of multiple planes of existence existing at the same time, with little differences presenting themselves all the time through choice. Going further, quantum immortality links to the MWI theory by referring to the many alternative realities and how, if one would have the potential to die in one, it would branch out to 2 realities, one where you died and one where you lived, much like the MWI theory. Using that as a basis, quantum immortality is a thought experiment in quantum mechanics and the philosophy of physics, presenting the idea that whether or not you died in one, you are always going to be alive in another reality. And so, thinking about it subjectively, you are never really dead. Hence, immortality. However, based on the non-linear aspect of time, old age, though a valid obstacle, might not apply for this. Research has not opened up this problem, and therefore, neither can I. And so Will, with as many realities, of going through the motions of one to find himself in another, Isla's supposedly, is through connection and through the quantum immortality of realities that suggests that no matter how many times Will repeats himself and faces his regrets and rectifies them, that isn't the main end result. It is about the journey of self and how, through many realities, Will, Isla, everyone, might actually be immortal. This could go on with the Hindu belief of enlightenment, further explained in the I Origins episode, how you are born again and again until you live the perfect life, liberating yourself from the cycle of birth and death to go to a higher place. The higher place being the end result, which, if Will could continue the cycles until he learns something from them, he can get to. The difference is him knowing that he is in a loop, which doesn't happen until some time later, and the worrying factor is the aspect of any human remembering their journey long enough to endure into the next level, much like the OA not remembering everything when travelling dimensions. Will shows this problem when travelling from one reality into another, It can be seen in him wanting to remember Isla, and the small hope of his last expression, whether it was remembering her on the beach or not. Going back to the MWI theory, in one reality, Will didn't get on the boat. In another, he got on, then, before it left, he got off. This can be the same for meeting and talking to Isla. There are many possibilities that a conversation can go, and so, with more possibilities, more choices, the more alternative realities there are based on those choices. This can be said for the connection between Will's NDE, linked to the OA again, and the young boy that is revealed to be Isla's son that died in the water, the reason for Isla ending her life. That link of Will's NDE to be Isla's son can be left for interpretation, because in the original reality, where Will eventually dies, how would Will know about her son, or even her name? At the beginning, when Will talks about his NDE, he was unsure as to whether the young boy could essentially be himself, or maybe his brother. There are questions that are unanswered, or rather implied, by what Will finds out about her. But I think there is more. With the MWI theory still in place, perhaps it's more about making one's own heaven/hell within each reality. There is a certain refreshing take if someone has the choice to do it again and change something. Or this can be the worst place on earth, doomed to repeat the same things over and over again until something gives, much like Groundhog Day. The movie could be more emotionally implied based on the next step in the journey, hence the apparent lack of it in the main storyline. At the end of the film, where Will wants to see Isla again after she gets shot, Will potentially subconsciously finds any reason to stay connected to Isla, and the most powerful one might be between Isla and her son. And where does he find himself but on the beach with Isla's son about to go into the water? Connecting the meaning behind beaches from the episode of Death Stranding, beaches can be seen as a gateway or the next step between the world of the living and the dead. Because Will always seems to be near water or on a beach, in whatever alternative reality, this can perhaps indicate some sort of purgatory, repeating the same sort of reality until things change for the better. From what can be understood is the connection between this cycle of repetitiveness. That was a theory in the episode explaining the lighthouse. The theory went that the men were stuck in purgatory, unable to move on, based on them being the same person. They needed to understand their differences, the young and the old, to not repeat the same mistakes, for the chance to move on. And this can be the same for Will, and for what was seen in Dr. Thomas Harber's afterlife experience, for everyone else. There are regrets in everyone's lives, but that shouldn't determine the afterlife, even though this was the main intention for the director and co-writer. Like everything else that is unknown, the audience can interpret the meaning behind things such as the afterlife, using theories and tools to make it more manageable for us to comprehend. David Ehrlich from IndieWire.com explains further. McDowell's, director, second film is haunted by roads not taken and choices not made. Seesawing between acceptance and remorse, he seduces his characters with second chances, throwing them at the deviously knotted idea and watching them untangle their way towards some kind of self-understanding. And glazed with arrestingly bitter blue-grey cinematography that makes the whole of Newport prickle with loss. However, the clarity Will finds at the end of his search is far more enticing than the journey. Cosmic implications in the movie's third act suggest the discovery is poised to dive off the deep end and follow Will as he pioneers new layers of space and time, but the film lends itself a trial map that deprives him, and us, the satisfaction of finding some measure of truth for himself. McDowell has crafted a story shaped by unanswerable questions and leverages the specificity of its destination in order to illuminate the universality of its journey. But if his telling has a way of getting it backwards, it doesn't fully obscure the view when the discovery looks over its shoulder and into the void. Besides, regrets make us who we are. It's not possible to live without them, and it's not possible to die without them either. The discovery introduces the question of what is the afterlife to the viewer, individually and as a collective, and in this instance, this film delves into the concept that the afterlife is based on choices and paths not taken. The loss of this reality is shown in another, and that other is for Will and Isla and everyone else, is the afterlife as we know it. but can you say the same? If you enjoyed what was said, please follow me on Anchor, Spotify, and other podcasting platforms for the latest episode, and be kept in the loop through my Instagram at 2takes_podcast. If you want to help me in the making of each episode, there is a listener support platform that can benefit the leveling up of this podcast, as well as have you, the supporter, having access to extra content. Find this at anchor.fm/2takespodcast/support. And as always, thanks for listening.